Welcome back to the MEL Series brought to you by the Learning Trust. This is the second episode in the 6-part series and offers a recollection of key information that was covered in the Theory of Change session. Let's start off by simplifying the Theory of Change, or TOC. Consider the example of making a chocolate cake. Pause the video here and close your eyes to picture what the best chocolate cake looks like. We all have different ideas of what the best chocolate cake looks like. In the same way, you would have a different idea about what your organization's ultimate outcome is and different ideas on how to get there. A theory of change allows you to co-create a clear vision of what your organization's chocolate cake looks like and how you can ensure that as an organization, you have the same picture and agree on how you're going to make it. This is important because if you aren't clear on what needs to happen to make the best chocolate cake, you could mess it all up. A TOC doesn't just explain what ingredients you need to produce your ultimate outcome. It identifies how you're going to get there. These are activities, and how you will know if you're on track. These are short to medium term outcomes. Now, let's look at a simple example based on an after-school program. Say an organization has this long-term outcome. The children and youth of Alex are regularly engaged in football activities, are fit and healthy, and they are producing future football stars. If they just have a list of ingredients or inputs, they are unlikely to reach their ultimate goal. However, as soon as they start mapping out the short and medium-term outcomes that are needed to produce the long-term outcome, it becomes easier to see the activities that will help bridge the gap from inputs to overall goal. The organization knows how they are going to get there via activities and have a way of knowing if they are on track via short to medium-term outcomes. Once you have a theory of change that is co-created based on evidence and maps activities to outcomes, you have a living document that acts as a tool to reflect and test how the change is expected to occur. For instance, if you don't see any football scouts attend games, you might use your TOC to reflect and realize you need to do more activities to engage with the scouts. Or you might notice that you don't see improved technical skills. With your team, you might use your TOC to reflect and decide to increase the number of football coaching sessions, retrain your coaches, or get sponsorship for quality footballs and boots. A theory of change is a living learning tool to inform improved programming and impact. It is not just a document you prepare for a funder. A diagrammatic representation of a program or organization is the centerpiece of most TOCs. There are many different ways of representing a TOC, and these can be quite simple, like a planning triangle, or more complex, like a written narrative. The first is a planning triangle that shows the link between activities, intermediate outcomes, and the final goal or outcome. A logic model is similar to the planning triangle, except it allows for more detail, particularly on how a project is delivered. A planning triangle and logic model are a great place to start, but there are limitations to these methods. For instance, they can encourage people to list too many features, which may not be fundamental to the change process. They don't often show the dynamic features of a project. They create the impression that inputs and activities happen first, followed neatly by outcomes. The outcomes change is the most widely used format, and it focuses more on causality and shows how activities are linked to which outcomes and in what order. The outcomes chain focuses on how change occurs and why it occurs, and forces you to think in detail about the sequence of outcomes. This is often in the form of a more complex visual. A written narrative is also a great way to describe your TOC. It can help identify missing elements, provide more detail, which is not always possible in a diagram, and allows space to capture aspects like context, assumptions, evidence, and enablers. Whatever the approach one adopts, a TOC ultimately has the following attributes: consultation, drawing on existing evidence, and mapping from outcomes to activities. Theory of change should adhere to a number of basic principles. Is it meaningful? Does it describe the project or organization accurately in ways that staff, trustees, volunteers, and stakeholders agree with? This can be achieved through consultation. Is it well defined? Is there a clear audience, client, or user group? And is it clear what you do? Is it comprehensible? Does it enable you to give someone a 2-minute story of the service? And would a member of the public understand the theory? Is it doable? Are the services and activities likely to contribute to the desired outcomes and impact? Is it plausible or realistic? Does it take into account your organization's capacity? It should be something that the program, project, or organization could really do, not just wish it could. Is it credible? Are people outside your organization likely to believe it? Is the secondary evidence you include credible with your stakeholders? Is it testable and grounded in evidence? Can you test the theory through a series of testable hypotheses? All the elements should theoretically be assessed using research and observation, even though you may not have the resources to assess this yourself. And lastly, is it supported by continuous learning? TOC is an iterative process involving several drafts, circulation, and further feedback. Next, there are key steps you can follow to develop a theory of change. Focus on the high-level change the organization intends to achieve. Does the intended goal align with the organization's overall vision, strategy, or mission? Identify what is needed for the desired change to happen, informed by evidence and how partners are contributing to this change. This process should be iterative, consultative, and informed by observations and evaluations. Establish the assumptions underpinning how the change happens and major risks that may affect it. Assumptions refer to factors that must be in place for expected results to be achieved. Risks refer to factors or events that can potentially impede the successful achievement of the results. Identify partners and actors who will be most relevant for achieving each result, taking into account the related risks and assumptions. It is important to recognize the people that are likely to have a direct role in determining the success or failure of your change effort. In summary, here are the next steps for your TOC process. First, convene a task team for your theory of change creation or revision. Apply the learning here to assess whether your theory of change has a clear focus, uses evidence to inform expected change pathways, considers and identifies assumptions and risks, and lastly, identifies key partners and actors that will contribute to the ultimate outcome being achieved. Remember, a theory of change is not a once-off document, but a tool to reflect and test how change is expected to occur. And that's it for the Theory of Change session. The next episode will focus on data collection. Until then,